Ann Elizabeth Isham is one of the big question marks of Titanic, and every now and then I see a rumor about her circulating on TikTok. And I'm here to dispel that rumor, but first I want to tell you a little bit about her life. She was born in Chicago to a pretty well known family. Her father was an attorney and a politician. He actually had a law firm with Abraham Lincoln's son. She was really involved in the local scene. She was charitable. She was involved with a lot of social groups like the Friday Club and the Scribblers Club. She was also the founding VP for the Women's Aid Society at Passavant Memorial Hospital, which was an organization that lasted over 100 years. She was also really intellectual. At the same time, she was on the membership committee for the Archaeological Institute of America, a woman after my own heart. And she donated a lot of books and funds to the American School of Classical Studies in Rome. Around 1903, she moved to Paris with her sister and her sister's husband, but her brother was living in New York City. And that is why, on April 10th, 1912, she boarded Titanic in Cherbourg to go visit her brother. Lizzie, that was her nickname, was in stateroom C49. Her stateroom was right next to Colonel Archibald Gracie's room, but he never remembered seeing her. And nobody else in the surrounding rooms recalled meeting her either. There were a few others who remembered her or remembered a woman who met her description. As far as the night of the sinking goes, no one knows where she was or what she was doing. There is one story that might be a possibility. There was this young journalist on board Carpathia. Her name was May Burkhead, and she was interviewing survivors. And about a week after Titanic sank, an issue of New York Herald came out where she wrote, and I'll read this to you. "A steward told me when he went to one of the first cabin passengers, a woman, and told her to dress and put on a life preserver, she merely laughed. 'If that little bump is all that happened, I'll stay right here,' she said. 'Madam,' replied the steward, 'my orders are from the captain to tell you to dress and put on a life preserver.' 'My orders to myself are to get back into bed and go to sleep again,' said the woman. And she did. She paid for that with her life." By process of elimination and what we know about the other first-class women who were traveling alone, it seems like Lizzie Isham is the only one who that story could match. Whether the story is true or not, we don't know. But survivor Helen Bishop did recount a similar story where she said a first-class woman refused to get out of bed. And now we come to the rumor. There is a story that goes around that says Lizzie Isham stayed behind with a Great Dane because the Great Dane was not allowed on the lifeboat. First point of order, she wasn't traveling with a dog. There may have been a Great Dane type dog on board, but it was someone else's. Could Lizzie have been with someone else's dog? Sure, but there are a few other reasons the story may not be true. The story goes on to say that one of the people on the recovery ships a few days later saw a woman frozen in the water with her arms clutched around a dog. The story cites a young woman, and she was about 50. Also, her body was never recovered, or if it was recovered, it was not identified. So ultimately, we don't know what happened to Lizzie on Titanic. Her family did write letters to Colonel Archibald Gracie and other passengers, and even sent out photographs of her to see if anybody had met her, talked to her, knew what happened to her that night, but they didn't end up finding out anything, and apparently the family has not kept any of that correspondence over time. What we do know is she died far too young, and her family erected a monument in her honor.